Good evening. Welcome to anybody that's joined us online. This is our January 18th, 2024 Western Washington University Associated Students of Western Washington University Executive Board meeting. My name is Adam Lorio, he, him pronouns. I'm the AS Government Advisor. Thank you for hanging in there with us. This is our first fully remote meeting of the year. In case you weren't aware, Bellingham's campus was closed today due to weather. Our Student Government Executive Board is meeting all online this evening along with our guests. We welcome anybody who has joined us to participate online. For those of you, if you have joined online during our public comment session, if you wish to interact, you're welcome to use the question and answer function in our Teams town hall. We'll do our best to get our questions. Thank you for your patience this evening as we work through our remote meeting attendance. It is our first online meeting of the year, so apologies from me, the technical advisor, if there are any tech issues. If for some reason we get disconnected, we'll be back with you as quickly as possible. With that, I hope you all enjoy the meeting and thank you for being here.
I would like to call the January 18th, 2024 Executive Board meeting to order at 5:37 p.m. Okay, first we are going to move into revisions to the agenda. Are there any revisions to the agenda today from anyone? Okay. Next, we can go on to consent items, and then after that is when we have public forum. So the first thing that we have for consent items are the meeting minutes. I've hoped everybody was able to review those. Are there any thoughts or comments or anything that we would like to change about the meeting minutes from the January 11th meeting? Yeah, Gabe?
The amendment to the Elections Advisory Committee is missing some of like the underlines and like strike throughs I put there. So it's not like how it's currently written is not, I don't think, clear enough for the minutes. So I just hope we can get that fixed.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. What is the best remedy for that? Because I don't want to approve meeting minutes that have something that isn't like reflected correctly, but I also don't know if the changes are extensive, like enough to do and when we do the approving the consent agenda, or if how do we want to go about remedying this situation?
I'll jump in with an advisor note. You're welcome to table this till next consent agenda and just remove it from the consent agenda this evening.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't get recognized. I could also just forward everyone on the exec board just the like specific, like the email I sent to you and Adam that has the right like underlines. I think the only like substantial thing is where it has the double parentheses that is being struck through, and then all the other language would be as like what it would read in the final version. So like the underlines where that would be like adding stuff aren't visible, but like that's not the most necessary thing. So in terms of like getting the board to understand what the amendment was, just understand that those double parentheses are strike through.
For clarity, do we think that it is the most clear to move it off of the consent agenda, or do we feel comfortable approving this as part of the consent items today?
Wong, I would still be comfortable passing it today. I don't know what the other members think though.
Yeah, Gabe, are you able to send the email to everybody so we have a better understanding of the language? And then we can move on to some of the appointments, and then we can just vote for the consent items together and we can resume this discussion then. So next we are going to be moving on to the Student Academic Grievance Board appointees. We have 2 appointees that we are going to be talking about today, and we have Mallory, who is the Office of Civic Engagement Director, with us here today to share a little bit about these 2 candidates.
Hi, thanks for that intro, Kira. My pronouns are she, they, by the way, just in case that's like relevant or necessary. Can you guys hear me okay? Great, thank you. Yeah, so we have 2 applicants for the Student Academic Grievance Board. They both seem really good. Kira and I have both looked over these already as reviewers for the form. One of the students is a Fairhaven major and another student is an electrical and computer engineering major. I think that is how you say that one. And they both have experience with previous like on-campus leadership and volunteer related things. And both of them kind of touched on that they have special interests within academic grievances. And yeah, I think that they both will fit very well. This committee has kind of recently been called to action. So they need to fill their seats pretty quickly. They need 6 graduate students and 6 undergraduate students. These would both be for the undergraduate seats. And then we would only have 4 left to fill, which is pretty good. Yeah. Any questions or comments from any of you? Yeah, Gabe.
I'm not sure this is the right forum for it, but for the committee to meet, since there's a pending grievance or grievances, how many like graduate, undergraduate, and faculty seats do they need?
Yeah, Adam, advisor response for you, Gabe. I've reached out to the executive secretary of that committee to ask that exact question. I'm waiting for verification, but so the appointment of 6 individuals gives them the pool to draw from. And my understanding at this time is that any particular grievance needs 2 students on it. But I will let you all know as soon as we hear. So yeah, as we ongoing roll folks into the pool, that'll be great, but they should be functional after this evening.
Thank you for that context, Adam.
Okay, now that if there are no further questions for Mallory, thank you so much for joining us today. Next, we are going to move on to the Elections Advisory Committee appointment. I want to state that I have made an error in creating this document. It says the Student Advisory Committee appointment. It is supposed to be the Elections Advisory Committee appointment. It just says that right in the title line, but everywhere else says Elections Advisory. And so the proposed motion is to appoint Sophie Snyder, the Associated Students Vice President for Student Services, to the Elections Advisory Committee. We've seen the Elections Advisory Committee charge and charter a couple times come up, and in order for the committee to begin meeting, we need a senator and executive board member to be seated. And my hope was that we would be able to appoint Sophie to that position, since she has several years of experience working in student government, and I think the insight that she can give to the ethics code, working with the elections coordinator, is going to be very needed experience. And also, Sophie is not going to be running again this year, since she is graduating and is going to be graduating this spring. So makes her a perfect candidate to sit on this board. Does anybody have any questions for myself or Sophie on this? Okay, now that there are no questions about that, Are there any further questions about the meeting minutes or any other of the items on the consent agenda? Would somebody like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Godwin makes a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Wong seconds.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say, or actually, can everybody use the chat to say if they approve, say yay, nay, or abstain? You can also say oi, but please use the chat feature so we're not all unmuting at once. So all those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, nay. Any abstentions, please state so. Okay, it passes unanimously. Okay, next we are going to be moving on to public forum. It looks like we don't have anybody joining us or any attendees watching today. Next, we are going to be moving on to the officer reports. I don't have too much to share. There really hasn't been too much going on with the snow days the past couple of days. I just wanted to remind everybody that I've sent a couple of, oh, bye Mallory, have a great night. Thank you for joining us. I've sent out a couple of reminders or a couple of different things over email, and I'm going to be continuing to do that. So just be aware, please pay attention to any emails that you're getting from myself or Adam, since they contain pretty important updates. And then the other really big thing is I know that we're all going to be having a lot more stressful quarters the next 2 quarters. It's really, winter and spring is really where it picks up in student government. So just remember to be responding to your emails and just aware, attending committee meetings. And we're also going to be continuing to have a lot more guests that are going to be joining us at these meetings, which is super exciting today. We have a pretty guest-heavy agenda. So, yeah. And then the other thing is after our last meeting, I've started a little bit of work on creating the survey that's going to be going out to students related to Narcan through the Associated Students Communications Office, and so that's going to be worked on with Morgan, and then we're going to have some input from Sophie and myself to kind of get that through, and hopefully we'll soon be able to get some Narcan access on campus other than the library where we currently have it. So super exciting things. Yeah, not too much. Okay, next we will move on to the Senate President report.
Hi, everyone. I'll also agree with Kira that I haven't been doing much with the snow days, but I do have a few things I've been working on, just going to the sort of regular committee meetings, Finance Council. Yesterday was the first meeting, I believe, of CommsCom, which is like the Communications Office Committee. Was pretty interesting. There's going to be some more stuff going on there with trying to get all the offices like sort of connected, and then also connected to the students. I'll be like working a little bit less this quarter to some extent because I'll be using some of my time for bargaining release time for the union, and then I've also been going to there was a university budget committee meeting last week. Other things, I'm doing some long-term planning for the Senate, and by long-term I mean like what the quarter is going to look like, what next quarter is going to look like, and then obviously like further down the line, also going to start looking at the Senate budget with Adam, working with Daisy, my vice chair and senator for the College of Business and Economics, to fill Senate vacancies for Fairhaven College, the College of Science and Engineering, and the Graduate School. We had, I don't know if you've all heard, but Quincy Ingalls resigned at the end of fall quarter. So you have to fill that position. And then we've just got one vacancy in each of those 3 colleges. That's most of what I've been working on. There's still some outstanding work to be done with Senate bylaws, the AS charter, and the AS constitution is things that I'm going to be working on now. I guess it's also parliamentary procedure, but that's further down the line. And yeah, that's sort of what my outlook is right now. Still going to be going to faculty senate meetings and trying to meet regularly with the provost and faculty senate president and advisors and things like that. So yeah, that's what I've been up to.
Thank you for sharing. Does anybody have any questions for Gabe? Okay, next we are going to be moving on to a vice president report from Liam.
Hey everyone, let me pull this up real quick. So, had a lot of stuff going on lately. The President's Sustainability Council, the Sustainability Action Plan that I talked about last week, kind of informally closed the comment period on that. So it's getting pretty close to being done and published. So that's exciting. SCJF, we're gonna have to replace a committee member just because he's in Olympia for an internship this quarter. So gonna have to fill that seat. We have someone interested, so it shouldn't take too long. Hopefully we'll have that done by next meeting. There's a ton of projects in the pipeline for SCJF, so it's going to be a really busy quarter, but it's also going to be really exciting. So yeah, that's good. Earth Week, some preliminary planning has been going on. There's going to be another food justice table like we did last year. There's going to be a trashin' show where it's like a fashion show, but everything's just made out of trash and recycled goods. So I think that's pretty cool. There's a potential film screening for something regarding sustainability and environmentalism. Still working that one out. We're going to be bringing food trucks on campus, and there's a bunch of other stuff that, frankly, I don't have the notes in front of me for right now, but it's going to be really exciting. What else? Been working with Senator Lauren Johnson to draft a proposed sustainability section for the Lobby Day agenda. So that I think is done, but it's out of my hands at this point. WOHESC, the application for that the deadline for that was last night. We had 76 applicants, which is awesome. And we are going to be reviewing those applications starting tomorrow. So yeah, got a lot of stuff going on, but it's all good stuff.
Hi, Liam. I have two super quick questions. Can you share what WOHESC means for everybody? I don't think many of us are familiar with that. And then can you also share a little bit about some of the bills that you're interested in including for the sustainability section? I'm not seeing that in the attached meeting agenda today or the meeting materials. It looks like there's no sustainability section. So we can talk about that a little bit more when we get there, but I'd be interested in hearing some more about that. So
yeah, first off, WOHESC, that is the Washington, Oregon, Cascadia Higher Education Sustainability Conference, and it's sort of the premier regional sustainability conference, it's in the name, for anything regarding environmental justice, urban planning, all of it. And we're going to be hosting this year. We have historically been bringing 10 to 15 students every year. Last year was at Oregon State. And this is going to be the largest amount of students that we've ever been able to bring to the conference. So thanks to an SCJF grant, we were able to open up a bunch of scholarships, and yeah, it'll be cool. And then the agenda items, I threw in a couple, but the main one that I really wanted was House Bill 2070, which provides protections and a platform for communities that have been disproportionately affected by environmental injustices. I know that this year our priorities for the Lobby Day agenda have switched a little bit from last year, but I still think it's incredibly important that we have a sustainability section, considering, we had nearly 800 people sign a petition on divestment. It's on students' minds, so yeah, I just think we should have that. I can email everyone else the actual full list of bills, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that'd be greatly appreciated. I would love to see more about that. I know every year I've engaged with Lobby Day, we've had that on there. It's a really important section, especially we're all impacted by climate change now and will only continually be, and students are really engaged with that on campus. So yeah, I see that. Aaron, you have a question?
Just a quick comment. I have the list of the bills from the sustainability section in the chat right now with links to them. Can I go ahead and send that? Would that be helpful?
Yeah, that would be great.
And I just want to say that the reason they're not on this version of the agenda was because they weren't submitted to me until 7:50 or 7 p.m. on Tuesday, and I had already submitted the version of the agenda that we're going to be reviewing today.
Yeah, sounds great. I mean, we'll see the lobby day agenda a couple more times probably before it's passed officially. So, okay. Next, we are going to be moving on to a vice president report from Morgan.
Okay, so I have a couple of updates going on. I'm still working with Kevin at Woodring about creating programming for Compass to Campus. It is just more training for those who don't know, for working with our students that are in high school, a lot of like first generation kids, just making sure that everyone knows that they can give our kids more options that work for Compass to Campus. I've also reached out to the DAC about accessibility on campus with the cold weather going on. I had a lot of questions about that, and they're still getting back to me about that. I am resuming my weekly meetings with Litov, who works at our ESC and Multicultural Center. I've also been working with the Office of Equity on a hiring committee for a few positions that they have had. They emailed me right at the beginning of break asking me if I could help, and I responded just a little bit because I know we weren't supposed to be working over break, but so I've been on a committee with them since the beginning of this week, and just in and out of meetings with that. And then I have been messaging City Council regarding their Immigration Advisory Board. For those who don't know, the city is looking at getting rid of that, and it is just really important that we have a bunch of resources for people who are immigrants in Bellingham. So that has been my list of updates for the past couple weeks.
Hey Morgan, super quick question. Wow, I had no idea they were trying to get rid of the Immigrant Advisory Board. Wow. I was aware that a lot of the seats were vacant, but I just wanted some clarity. If you could share a little bit more about that, and then just to double check, this is the mayor's Immigration Advisory Council, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So there are a lot of vacancies on it, which has been really hard. And I've been emailing them about like, hey, I know it gets really hard to have people show up sometimes, and it looks better on paper to get rid of things. But it is a really good resource for people who aren't immigrants, because it gets a lot of their feedback onto like the city council's agenda. So there's not been a ton of progress with communication. I've been in communication with their at-large person for city council. The mayor and a couple other of the city council people haven't gotten back to me, but their person who is their at-large representative, we've been emailing back and forth a whole bunch, and they are very committed to trying to keep the Immigration Advisory Board. So they're doing everything they can.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about this. I think you and I should connect, and it would be really important. So for some like background, there's been a couple of people where their terms have ended for this advisory board, and they, even though they would like to be reappointed, they have been not reappointed and given various different reasons. So really interesting, really sad to hear that. Let's definitely connect some more. It looks like Gabe has a question or a comment.
Yeah, just sort of copying what Kira said. I think it'd be good to keep the executive board just in the loop about sort of how this progresses. I know I've seen some stuff on like social media, but since you're in contact with city officials, that would be helpful. And then the other thing is I have a question about in the Office of Equity. I know from my understanding is that there's one of the vacant positions is like the HR trainer person. I'm wondering if that's the only position you're hiring for, or if there's like other ones you're like basically which positions are being hired in the Office of
There's
Equity.
2 more. I don't know if I'm allowed to share what those positions are exactly. I can definitely check with the person from the Office of Equity if I can share about that, because I know I had to take a training on there's some things I can share and not share. So I will email him and get back to you about what positions are open, if that is okay.
Yeah, thank you.
It looks like Adam has a question.
Just quick advisor note, if you're referencing official Western positions that are open, you can always encourage folks to watch the Western hiring website, which lists all the currently officially open positions.
Okay, perfect. Well, they are posted there too, I guess.
Okay, if there are no further questions for Morgan, we can move on to the advisor report.
Sweet. Once again, thanks for a little bit of time. Adam, AS Government Advisor. I'll go ahead and do my report from off screen. Pretty quick tonight. As Gabe mentioned, we are in the thick of AS operations and AS government budgeting cycle for fiscal year 25. So a budget that starts July 1st. For this group, I will work with Gabe and Kira first on the exec board and Senate budgets. I'll also have some work to do with Casey and the OCE team to update their budget proposals for fiscal year 25. Those are due to AS Finance Office at the end of this month for the first draft of those. So we'll get those finished, but I'll work with you all to get those put together. They will be shared with you before they go through and have updates for you. For anybody that hasn't already, please schedule your regular advisor meetings with me for this quarter. As you've all mentioned, this is a busier quarter. It's more important than ever that I stay in touch with you all so I can support you, even if it ends up just being half an hour a week or we adjust to even less frequently. I do need to have those meetings on the books so that I can support you this quarter. Regarding the charter, just want to confirm on timeline and remind you, sent an email today, contacted President Rondawa's office to look at a time for a ceremonial signing. Looks currently like Sama's calendar is probably open February 1st, which would align just before the exec board meeting time for that day and be in the sweet window between hopeful approval of the charter as presented and time for it to go to Board of Trustees at their February meeting. I do have an alternative strategy should it be needed, but we can discuss that at a different time. Lastly, from me, job description updates as part of budgeting and looking forward to next year. We're going to start sooner rather than later, reviewing and getting recommendations for updates on all of your official position descriptions so that we can refresh that certainly in time for elections. Because in case you weren't aware, we start ramping up real quick for the election cycle for next year and want to be proactively prepared for that. So I will be reaching out on those. Please respond as you are able. And otherwise, happy to answer any questions or add items to my to-do list that you have for me this evening.
Okay, with no questions for Adam, then we are going to move on to the information items guests today. First, we are going to be joined by the AS Local Issues Coordinator to give us a report and an update on local issues. And so we have Gabby here with us today.
Hi, everybody. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. I think we're gonna take a minute and then we will pull up the slides, and then they're also attached in the meeting packet as well, if you are having trouble seeing them on your screen.
All right. Yeah, we can go ahead and get started. So Adam, you have control of the slides, is that correct? Okay. Cool. Well, like I said, or as Kara said, I'm Gabby. I'm the local issues coordinator from the OCE, and I'm just here to give you guys an update on what's been happening in local politics in Bellingham and Whatcom County for the fall and winter. We can move to the next slide. Okay, awesome. So hopefully most of you will already know this, but Whatcom County had a general election in November of last year. Quite a few things happened with that, so we'll just go over a couple of things that happened on the city side. Firstly, as of January 1st, we have a new mayor. Kim Lund was elected as mayor to replace Seth Fleetwood, so she's just getting started in her term. And then on the city council side, there were a couple of folks reelected. So Hannah Stone, who represents Ward 1, which is the northern Bellingham area, so the Columbia and Birchwood neighborhoods, was reelected. And Daniel Hamill from Ward 3, which is downtown, Leonard Streets, Sunnyland, York, and a little bit of the Roosevelt neighborhood. So a little bit more closer to our campus. They were both reelected to the council, so their terms are restarting. Jace Cotton was elected to the at-large seat, and then there were a few initiatives that were passed. Initiatives 1 and 2, which have to do with minimum wage and renter protections. The first one, basically what it does is it increases Bellingham's minimum wage to $1 above the state minimum wage in May 2024, and then that increases to $2 above the state minimum wage in May of 2025. So just trying to address the rising cost of living in Bellingham. And then initiative 2, which is renter protections. It's a little bit more complicated. I'll try to explain it as best as I can, but essentially it creates a relocation assistance program for renters. So landlords are required to give at least 120 days notice when increasing the rent more than 8%. And when they do increase rent more than 8%, they have to provide relocation assistance, which amounts to 3 times the rent or the average market rate in the area, whichever is higher. And they have to give tenants a 5-month relocation period. So essentially just making Bellingham a slightly more equitable place to rent. A couple of other things were passed. Public health, safety, and justice sales tax was passed, which is going to go toward a lot of criminal justice and behavioral health programs in the city. And the Greenways Levy was passed. The Greenways Levy supports Bellingham's Greenways program, which does a lot of the work on the parks and trails that we enjoy here in town. On the county level, a couple of other things happened. So Paul Sidhu was reelected as the county executive. Donald Tanksley was elected as sheriff. And finally, the jail initiative passed. So Whatcom County is going to be getting a new jail. The site is going to be out in Ferndale. It's not going to be operational until 2028. So there's kind of a long road ahead for that. But yeah. And then we can move on. Couple of other things happening on the city level. So first, winter shelters. Obviously, we all know we had a snow day today. We've been having some pretty serious winter weather the past couple of weeks with a ton of snow and also really unseasonably low temperatures. So the city and the county have been kind of working double time to meet the increased demand on the area's winter shelters. Despite that extra effort, well, I guess because of that extra effort, they've been able to accommodate numbers over capacity for most of those shelters for the past week or so. The comprehensive plan, which basically what that does is provides a set of guidelines for Bellingham's policy for the next 25 years, mostly focusing on housing, transportation, climate resilience strategies, and just generally kind of guiding Bellingham's long-term growth. The city is slated to submit its final comprehensive plan update in 2025. So it's in the feedback process right now. They've been doing a ton of outreach, actually, trying to get a lot of feedback from groups who maybe don't always interact with city government. So specifically looking at renters and youth, a lot of folks our age, students. We actually hosted the city in November of 2023 to get feedback on that plan. Yeah. Specifically, actually, the bike master plan, which basically guides all the bike infrastructure in Bellingham. The public comment period for that ends tomorrow. So if any of you are like super interested in making Bellingham a more bike-friendly place, I can send you a link to share your thoughts with the city. And finally, renter protections. So obviously that initiative 2 passed, so that's gonna change things in Bellingham a lot. And then also the city is really trying to strengthen its rental registration and safety inspection program, which essentially provides a set of livability standards for housing, just keeping folks safe. They are putting a lot of funding into increased enforcement of those guidelines and also increasing fines for non-compliance for landlords who are not keeping their properties livable. And then also there's been a little bit of discussion in a few of the meetings on taxing landlords via a business and operations tax. Currently, the only way that landlords are taxed in Bellingham right now is via property taxes. So we haven't seen any actual like legislation yet, but it'll kind of be interesting to see where that goes. We can slide down. A couple more things on the city level. Recently, the city council passed a resolution urging a ceasefire in Gaza, Israel, and Palestine, and also expressed support on a federal level for House Resolution 786, which essentially does the same thing on a federal level, calls for the federal administration to support a ceasefire publicly. And also, the Whatcom Transportation Authority is considering an expansion of Bellingham Station to accommodate more buses. That would really encourage a lot of growth in the downtown area, and it's another area that's super relevant to students. As we all know, a lot of us take the bus to commute. I also have survey links for that if anybody's really passionate about that. And then a couple more things on the county level. The Whatcom County Council passed 2 resolutions requesting the state of Washington and the federal government to declare an emergency in response to the opioid crisis. Bellingham and Whatcom County both have seen increasing rates of overdoses and overdose deaths related to fentanyl and opioids in the past few years. So this is super important. And the Lummi Nation is also seeking state funding for crisis response for specifically their constituency as well. Yeah. And on the new jail, a sales tax was adopted by the county council to fund that new jail, along with a couple of other behavioral health and criminal justice programs. They've also been They've been allocating a lot more funding through the fall for their crisis response and alternative response team. So the alternative response team essentially sends behavioral health specialists instead of police to nonviolent 911 calls. So just kind of trying to address that rate of police violent interactions. And then finally, ABC Recycling has proposed a site for a metal shredder on Marine Drive, which is just north of Bellingham. It's actually in Bellingham's urban growth area. So if and when Bellingham does grow outward from the city center, it's going to grow in that direction. There's been a widespread community concern about noise pollution and environmental degradation in the area because it is really, really close to a residential neighborhood. So on that note, the county council voted against a moratorium on permitting for that area. So essentially giving ABC Recycling the go-ahead to submit a permit. Obviously, there's going to be a whole permit process ahead of them, but we will see where that goes. It'll be interesting. to see that. And a couple more things, just to wrap up really briefly. On a state level, obviously the legislative session opened on January 8th. The legislators for the 40 and 42nd districts, which are representing Bellingham and Whatcom County, have been doing a lot of work for us lately. Some of their priorities really strongly reflect the city, county, and the Port of Bellingham every year collaborate on a joint legislative agenda, and their priorities are really reflective of that. So they're hugely focusing on housing, climate, water rights, and the water rights adjudication in the Nooksack River area, which is going to need a lot of attention in the coming years, as well as mental health and supporting childcare in the area. Yeah, that is pretty much all I have. If you guys have any questions or are interested in commenting on any of the city's plans, please let me know and I will send you the associated links. Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Does anybody have any questions for Gabby before we move on? Okay, well, I just wanted to thank you once again for coming. It definitely means a lot, and it is super exciting to see an update on what is happening. So thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope you have a great rest of your night.
Thanks, Kira. You too.
Okay, next we are going to be moving on to the Operational Student Employee Recognition Resolution draft, and that is going to be presented by Gabe today.
Yeah, hi. Can we scroll to that? Yeah. So this resolution is very similar to one we passed last year for the educational student employees. And the context for this is that operational student employees have petitioned the state labor board to sort of certify their union so that they can bargain with Western administration like the educational student employees are doing right now. If we go to the end with the resolving clauses, asks a few things. So first it states the AS is, or it would state the purported position of the AS that we think that recognizing an OSE bargaining unit is in the best interest of the University, of operational student employees, and of the membership of the ASWWU and the public. And then it requests a few things from the university, respecting the wishes of its faculty and staff, because faculty and staff unions have supported the OSE recognition, acting in accordance with its strategic plan, because its strategic plan calls for competitive wages and benefits, recognize the OSE bargaining unit, negotiate with the operational student employees, and then finally formally respond to the ASWWU about those requests. And then here with us today is Erin Magaro, an OSE, who's going to just sort of talk a little bit about why it's important to have a union.
Hey y'all, I'm Erin. This time last year, I had two jobs. So I was a tutor at the tutoring center. So that's classified under the Educational Student Employee Union. And I also worked for the Ethnic Student Center, which is classified for the Operational Student Employee. So I'm currently working on the campaign for recognition for operational student employees. And through that, I've talked to numerous people who work on Western's campus and do essential jobs. And the resounding words from them and the people in our organizing committee is that student workers on this campus are now starting to stand in their power and are tired of working two jobs and not making ends meet. And I personally I'm tired of watching my friends work jobs right alongside salaried workers who have without the same worker protections, healthcare, or union representation. It's unfair, and I think that the university depends on the cheap labor of students to run, and it's no longer, and student employees are no longer satisfied with that. It's time that all workers on campus have a seat at the table and have a say in our workplaces, and ASWWU should absolutely voluntarily recognize the Operational Student Employee Union. So thanks y'all for your time and bringing this resolution forward.
Yeah, thank you, Erin, for that perspective. And then one more thing I wanted to know is when I bring this back next week and when I present it in the Senate, I'm probably going to add another amendment that's asking the university to support Senate Bill 5895, which would be an authorizing statute, or a statute that would sort of define the process for collective bargaining, the scope of that under Washington state law. Currently, NORA, there was actually just a public forum, or whatever it's called, hearing in the Senate Labor Committee this morning, and NORA, the lobbyist for Western, was raising some concerns that we were seemed a little bit unfounded about it. But yeah, just sort of getting Western to support that bill would be another good thing to ask for, since that would, like, Western's current sort of objection to voluntary recognition is that there's not a sort of outlined structure for collective bargaining, and that bill would provide that. And I'm pretty sure they supported the Educational Student Employee Bill last year. But yeah, any questions you guys have?
First, I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming and sharing. Especially, I think both of you talked very passionately about it, each sharing experiences. And so thank you for bringing forward this and coming and speaking today at our meeting. The only thing is, I think that we want to, let's double check and see if they have supported bills in the past when it comes to like recognizing different groups that would like to unionize, because what I've heard previously is that the university has a policy that they won't support any bill, or they want to stay on a neutral stance of that.
I guess, Erin, you can talk. I was hoping Kira would call on you, but
don't speak unless spoken to, whatever. Yeah, just some clarification and then also a question is that Nora Sellender, the university's lobbyist, has said that she is in a position to have the university go pro on the bill on SB 5895, not endorsing the union itself, but the bill that allows collective bargaining rights for the operational student employees. So that's not set in stone, but that is something that verbally she's expressed. I will say, as far as the resolution goes, the targeted audience is for our university's administration, correct? Like president, board of trustees. I've spoken to President Randawa like directly about this and asking him to voluntarily support the OSE collective bargaining, and he replied his response was that the administration basically isn't going to do that until there's a law that clarifies the framework. And I think he was pretty firm on that. And I think they've been really consistent in that messaging that until there's a law that provides, the clarity and the framework, that they're not going to do that. So my question is, what are we trying to accomplish with this resolution? You know what I mean?
yeah, I guess what I would say is it is sort of, it's really like a like pressure tool, just like any resolution is, where it's would fit very much like how we've been doing with like the fossil fuel divestment, where you use a bunch of different strategies to kind of get the university to move on your requests. And I think that while it is the like sort of position of the administration right now that they won't recognize the union without a law. I think that that's the sort of the idea that there isn't a like uniform way to collectively bargain is sort of a, like, in my personal opinion, a like cop out, where collective bargaining has been going on for more than 100 years. It's a pretty like well established practice, and if the university wanted to, they could. There's nothing like legally prohibiting them from doing that. So yeah, I think it's really just about showing the administration what our position is, and I think if we can get a formal response that is just them saying like, no, we won't do that without a law. I think that's also useful as a way to sort of get the university's position on the record beyond just their formal response to PERC. It would get it more in like the public eye.
Okay, just to, if I may say one more thing, is like I agree in concept. Oh, I agree like with the goal of it. Just like restating that I don't think it's effective directly for the university administration, but I think maybe it would be beneficial to do something similar to what we did with the calling for a resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza that was directed at our government representatives, given that there's a bill in the state legislature and you're talking about including an amendment about supporting that bill. Maybe we can direct this towards the representatives of the 42nd and the 44th legislative district in our state to get support going that way.
One thing I want to state on that is both of these ideas super great, and we can talk more about what one we would like to do, or possibly both. The only thing that I want to say when it comes to reaching our elected officials, it is super hard to actually reach most of them online through email and email them a resolution. Instead, they have like comment boxes on their websites where you can give them information. And instead, if we would like to send them a resolution, we will have to mail it to them. And that does take some time, and it's not necessarily like, do they open it? Do they receive it? Will they respond? So there is just some technical issues that are kind of added there if we would like to reach the elected officials. So it is a whole other level of challenges there that we experienced with the ceasefire resolution, trying to share it to our intended recipients.
For sure.
Yeah, I'll just respond to sort of your idea, Aaron. I think that, yeah, I think that there are sort of two ideas there. Like, we could forward one resolution to both admin and legislators, or do them separately. Sort of the reason why this one is aimed at the university administration is because it really is like their call in terms of like operationally what happens. The other thing is we are like intersectional lobby day is coming up in about a month, and this bill is on our lobbying agenda. So sort of the utility of having something that's fully separate from that lobbying agenda as like a extra thing, I don't know if that's necessary. I mean, that's something we can always consider, but yeah, that's just sort of my reasoning there.
Are there any other comments or questions people have? Okay, well, thank you both for presenting today and sharing about this. Next, we can move on to the information items from board members. I hope you have a great night, Aaron. So thank you for joining us and coming and speaking. I hope you have a great night. Okay, first we are going to be talking about the student government charter. We kind of we're gonna have to stick within our time limits for the next two items. We have 10 minutes for the charter and then 20 minutes for the legislative agenda, and then we're gonna be hitting time, so we'll wanna stay within that window. We have all seen the charter a couple of times. So this is the revised final one that they're hoping that we can pass to be signed by February 1st. It is going to go through the Senate and then also the executive board. So if there are any changes that we would like to make to it or anything, we really want to discuss that now, spend that time, or communicate that to me, or communicate it to Melinda, meet with Melinda as soon as possible. The changes that were made were taken into consideration both through the task force that was meeting to come up with some recommendations to give. We edited some things, changed some things, and then we also left a lot of comments, questions, and clarifications. And then Gabe also had an individual meeting with Melinda where they were able to go over that. I know Gabe can speak a little bit more to your conversation with Melinda, but just some context there about why we have this version and why it looks the way that it does, and the changes that were made. And sadly, there are not tracking changes on here, so it can be a little difficult to understand what was actually changed. Yeah, you would like, we can kind of compare the two and kind of look back, and we can go section by section, or if people have had the time to go through and look over it, if you have any thoughts. But we can first start with Gabe.
Yeah, I just wanted to pose a question to you, Kira. And honestly, I just forgot it. So yep. Oh yeah, I remember. The charter task force. I know before the end of the quarter, the thought was that there would be one last meeting of the task force before we officially vote on it. Is that something you're planning on doing still, or were you thinking that we just go to both of the governing bodies?
Due to the limited time frame, I thought that we would just go to the two bodies. That's on me for not providing any further update. It just, by the time I got it back from Melinda and realizing that, like, oh, it's the 16th, like, we need to get this in front of both of the bodies, I'm not necessarily sure if we can go forward with meeting one more time, unless we wanted to call, like, in a very quick meeting, either the 19th or the 22nd. But if that's something we would like to do, we can, but my hope is that we can get some input today and then it go to the Senate, and then come back to the executive board on the 25th, and hopefully have it passed through both boards by the 25th, so we can make the Board of Trustees meeting on the, I need to have everything submitted by the 30th of January. Yeah, Adam.
Just advisor question along the lines of having it go to both governing bodies. I understand the next Senate meeting's the 24th, next exec board's the 25th, which to me suggests that you want to have a really nicely finalized version that you expect to pass each of those bodies. So if there's feedback and need for reconciliation between two different suggested edits, I would suggest putting together a small group, and maybe that's the task force that comes together in the case that those happen. And it kind of puts it in the Senate's ballpark to do review and suggested revisions in a timeline well before that meeting, so early next week. Just wanted to put that out there for possible logistical questions.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. We can definitely meet the charter working group either Monday or try and find a time tomorrow if people are available. As a reminder, that's myself, Sophie, Gabe, and then 2 student senators that have been meeting. So yeah, kind of how the edits have been going is this is kind of like the finalized edition that is revised. So we've been meeting, both taking things from our meetings and the charter working group, and then going to Melinda and sharing what we would like edited. And then that's done by admin. It's not, we are not like physically editing the document, if that makes sense. So there's kind of editing, and then it's sent to admin, and then it's sent back, and then kind of that way, if that makes sense. Yeah, Gabe.
Yeah, I just wanted to note, to sort of change, or maybe it was just one change, I don't know, but some changes that I was glad to see. The clarity in Article 1, I think is really good. Using some of that language that comes directly from the like Washington state law, the like recognized student association, and what's the other one? Oh, I guess that's Article 1 and 2, and then like student government organization or whatever the other one specifically is. Yeah, those two terms I think are really helpful for clarity, and that very clear distinction. Yeah, that was a really good addition. I'm glad that Melinda incorporated that after our meeting.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Sorry, I was plugging in my laptop super quickly. So kind of going over a little bit of the edits to talk a little bit more about it. So in the first paragraph, there has been some changes that we requested to kind of give a little bit more of that clarity. The 3 bullet points that are there are still essentially the same, or I think they're exactly the same. And then Article 1, it originally used to be recognition, and that's where there was kind of where it talked about the ASWWU membership, and how the different powers have been established. So instead, there was a change from ASWWU in Article 1 that talks about how somebody is a voting member of ASWWU, what that means. One thing that is still in here is it is, I think, all full-time, part-time graduate and undergraduate students who are registered for one academic accredited are all part, or it is changed. So instead of it being like all students at WW, it is only students who pay the service and activities fee is a really big change. And so previously, everybody from every member campus, whether you went to like WW on like at another campus and like Everett, you would be part of the AS. Now it is just people who pay the services and activities fee. So those who pay get their representation. And so that is just the Bellingham campus that is part of the services and activities fee. Gabe, you have a question or comment?
Oh yeah, just a like very nitpicky clarifying comment. So as it reads, where students pay service and activities fees, how I read that is, so in my meeting with Melinda, she had mentioned that there was sort of the idea that maybe they would do like a smaller SNA fee, because SNA fees are like a class of fee, not a specific fee, to like pay for the WIN platform or something for voting, since they do want to expand student government across, as Western itself expands in its satellite campuses. So yeah, just to note that basically that doesn't necessarily have to be the whole $200 fee. It could be like you're only paying for WIN in order to vote. Yeah. And you also, that it looks like you don't have to pay the fee yourself. Like if it's a campus where people do pay the fee, you still can vote. So like if you get it waived or whatever other, complications.
Yeah. And then after that, it goes on to talking about the duties of the ASWW. It is kind of a lot of the same. There's different wording changes that have been added. And then I think one of the big ones is we added representation to appropriate governmental agencies as well as participating in the shared governance. That part I think is reflected earlier, and so we wanted to make sure it's reflected throughout. And then it kind of goes into granted authorities, which is the same section that there was previously, except one of the there were a couple of changes, I think, to some of the language, and then there was also an additional ad that we wanted about providing holding elections to change or establish fees. That was kind of one of the big changes that were in there. And then I think some clarifying at the bottom. We kind of are at time, but does anybody have any comments, questions? A lot of our suggestions were really taken into account by Melinda, which was great. I think everything that we agreed as a group and like physically wrote on the document was taken into consideration and is reflected in the document. So yeah, hopefully we can get this passed at the next meeting of the executive board. But are there any comments or questions people have? No. Okay. Well, if you do have any comments or questions, there is always an opportunity to email me, email Melinda, or meet with Melinda. Is always an option as well if you have any thoughts on this. But yeah, I just want to thank Gabe and Sophie both for your work on this. I know you guys have done a really great job on both of this and providing some input. It's very nice, and I really appreciate all of the input everybody has given. So yeah, next we can move on to our final item today, which is going to be the Western Intersectional Lobby Day 2024 legislative agenda, which is going to be presented by Erin.
Hi, everybody. So I came to the board at the end of fall quarter with a draft of the agenda that focused more on generic issue areas such as financial aid, student employment, and health and wellness, as well as a value statement. And so the difference between that document and this one is that since the legislative session has started, there's a bunch of bills that have rolled in. So there's lists of bills that are relevant to financial aid, student employment, and health and wellness, but there are also bills related to, there's like a miscellaneous section. Sustainability was added like recently, and also a bunch of other stuff. We can go through that, but yeah, what I did was I listed these bills and then I included like a short, very short summary of like what it is and then how it relates to Western students. I am not the most confident in my writing abilities, and I also wrote this somewhat hastily, so I would appreciate all of the feedback that people have to give, and I'm going to be taking notes on my version of the document. So I was thinking I could just present these, rather briefly and get people's opinions, especially on the ones that were newly added or things that we haven't discussed before. So in the financial aid section, we have SB 5999 and 5904, which have to do with expanding eligibility for the Washington College Grant. What they would do is expanding the eligibility with the median family income, which is like who is able to enroll in the program or benefit from the program. Currently, it's at 60% median family income, and we're asking to expand it to 70% so that more people can benefit from this. And additionally, students can only receive benefits within they have to complete their education within 5 years. We're asking to have those eligibility expanded from 5 years to 6 years. Moving on, there is HB 1946, which was added like very recently, which has to do with creating the Washington Health Corps Behavioral Health Scholarship, which is targeted at supporting Yes, Kira.
I just wanted to, or you can finish what you were saying. I wanted to go back to say something about the two previous bills. You can finish what you're saying. My apologies.
You go. We'll go topic by topic. So you go ahead and talk about WCG.
Yeah. I just wanted to say I had the opportunity to talk before the Higher Education Committee about expanding the eligibility from to 70% median family income. So that's going to be super great, reaching it's going to be reaching more middle income families, which is super exciting. It's continued to grow over the years. For some context, like me being a Pell Grant recipient, I received $200 from the Washington College Grant. I'm no longer a Pell Grant recipient, but I receive close to $3,000 from the Washington College Grant. So as it continues to grow, it's really continuing to impact people, which is really exciting. It also includes the Bridge Grant and gives more people the Bridge Grant, which is $700 or up to $700 that can be used for other educational costs, including tuition, but it's really meant to go to like housing, books, and different types of things. And then the other thing that I wanted to say is for the financial aid programs from 5 to 6 years of eligibility, that's really just to align with federal aid. So the Pell Grant goes all the way to 6 years. So some individuals have been running out at 5 years, but their Pell Grant will continue to the 6 year, but they can't get aid. And there was wonderful individuals that spoke about different disabilities that had impacted them, health reasons, mental health reasons, and even just working full time that has really pushed their education from 4 to 6 years. So yeah, super cool opportunities, and the Washington College Grant is the most like expansive financial aid program that any state has. So super exciting to see that we're supporting that.
Yes, and we have 20 more bills on this list with 15 minutes left, so I do want to run through them very quickly. The next one is SB 1946, which would create the Washington Health Corps Behavioral Health Scholarship. I believe has already been established, and this is adding funds to that, and also the program supports people like getting their education, but then like people who enroll in that program in order to fulfill that scholarship, you know, are required to serve rural areas or areas that lack behavioral health specialists. So I think that would be cool to benefit students who are in psychology programs or social services or human services at Western. Kira.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I know that we have 20 bills, but we don't necessarily have to go through all of them line by line. I think it would be the best use of our time if we went through ones that don't have any like text following up of them, because we've all had access to this document for over 24 hours. And to be prepared for the meeting, I hope we were all able to read it. And so it can be a lot of repetitive issues. I know that I spoke for a minute there, but it was really adding a little bit of context that can help students talk a little bit more in their meetings with legislatures, and they are really important programs there. So that might help a little bit more since there's only a couple of them that don't have any information that we haven't read. And then we also weren't able to read anything about sustainability. And so it might be good to go through those line by line since they weren't attached to the meeting documents for us to read prior to this meeting.
Yes. Okay. So if everyone has had a chance to go through, I'm trying to sort it out in I'm also dealing with like 2 different versions of this document, but I'll stick to the one that I shared with y'all. Skipping down. Okay, so if no one has any questions or comments about the bills that are within financial aid and student employment or health and wellness, I'm gonna go over down to miscellaneous. So there's a bill to remove gender terms from the state constitution, and very straightforward. It would, all the bills that say he, or all the language of like he, him would be replaced with they, them, which I think is cool. There's concerning the temporary suspension of the state motor vehicle tax. That has to do with a like carbon capping pricing program that the state legislature passed, I believe, in the last session, and it's suspending that. I don't know, that issue I'm pretty sure is going to be on the ballot in the next election, and so this is the legislature is trying to go ahead and like nip it in the bud in the time between now and that election. So that is something concerning fossil fuel emissions, and you know that we would be against. There's also the repealing the greenhouse gas content disclosure provision, which has to do with energy companies have to disclose all of the chemicals and fossil fuels that they are emitting, like through their, you know, providing energy to people in the state. And what this bill wants to do is make it so that they don't have to disclose how many greenhouse gas emissions they're producing. There's also, and those would have to do with sustainability, and they're also included in the bills that I sent in the chat if y'all have the time to check those out. So the next one is enhancing requirements for the purchase or transfer of firearms. I didn't include as much information on that one because I felt like it's not something that like needs to be on our agenda. Yes, it's an issue that we as like our campus would support, I believe, and like is important to us as students. But this bill has a lot of support in the House, and I feel like it'll be able to pass, or like it's just not something that necessarily like needs to be like the top of our agenda. And also when we're thinking about this agenda, personally, I don't want it to be too many bills. I want it to be more concise than last year's. Last year's agenda was 26 bills, and currently this agenda has 22 bills. So I am looking to reduce them. I would advocate for that. So in addition to enhancing requirements for the purchase or transfer of firearms, that bill has 40 co-sponsors, which is half of the House of Representatives. So it has a lot of support. Yes, Kira.
I definitely, or you can continue what you were saying, sorry, and then I can go after.
No, I was going to hop on to the next one. So if you have something to say, go for it.
Mine is kind of more of just a general comment. I totally get how 22 bills is a lot and that can be really hard, but suggestions that I've given before and also from lobby days that I've participated in that have been higher ed focused but not Western specific is they go topic areas and then they have about as many topic areas as we do, but they have bullet points under the topic areas, and within the bullet points, like it would just be expanding financial aid and eligibility, and then it would be parentheses HB 5999 or SB and then SB 5904. And then if you guys aren't aware, law or the Legislative Affairs Council works to put together a little bit information on all of the bills. And so it might be more helpful in the agenda itself to have the value statement and then have these different topic areas and really have bullet points, because if you start out with the bills, it can be kind of confusing when a lot of them have to deal with similar or some of the same issues that can really be recapped in a quick sentence, and then every student is going to have some more information on each of these bills that is going to be provided at a later date.
Yes, thank you for that reminder on how to structure the formatting. I definitely agree with that. One thing I will say is my my concern with the agenda is there's the physical paper or like digital version of the agenda that like all the legislators will receive, so they'll be able to read all of this. I think one of the core components of Lobby Day is the face-to-face meeting with the legislators, which is 15 minutes, which is not enough time to discuss 20 bills. And I want us to have a very like targeted and direct message this year that all of the legislators are receiving the same or similar information from all of the student groups who meet with them. Because from my experience last year, it was a pick and choose your own adventure, and all of the legislators were getting different information about what we endorse. And I personally didn't like or agree with that structure, and I'm trying not to continue that this year. Go ahead, Gabe.
Yeah, I just sort of wanted to like say that what Kira was saying about sort of like just main idea sort of and like Bill's secondary to main idea, I think would help with that like conciseness thing. And then the other thing is an idea that floated around at the end of last year from Jesus, I think, was the idea of having the agenda that you're giving to the legislator, but then also having like an appendix that the like student lobbyists, since you all become deputized lobbyists when you go to lobby day, like have an appendix that has more detail for them, because the legislators, they have like staff and their entire job is to read bills, so we don't need to like summarize them for them. We just sort of have to say like which ones we support and don't. Oh, and the other thing I was going to say, not unrelated, is I think it's important that in our agenda it's very clear which ones we like support and don't support. So right now it only says like there's some that it says like against, but yeah, just making sure that that's clear. I think you can sort of like intuit it, but it would be better if it was explicit.
For sure. And Kira, before I get to you, I just want to say like my intention with reviewing the agenda right now is to kind of gauge from you all, like, I don't know if we want to endorse all of these bills or if there's ones that people feel like, you know, oh, I didn't even think about all the ones that like additional ones that need to be included. But if there's anything that people want to speak up and say like, hey, you know what, that doesn't need to be on our agenda, go for it. Kira, go ahead.
Yeah, I have two things. First, addressing that, I don't necessarily know if that's the most productive to do it, especially since like we're approving this, but we're giving the power to LAC to really put these bills on here, choose. Every member has done so much work talking to some of the LAC members. They've done a really great job and so much work has gone into this. So I don't know if I necessarily feel comfortable stating now, like, I don't think that we shouldn't support this, especially since the committee is really the one that votes on it first. And then we come here. And if there's any like big red flags, we can share this. I'm not seeing any big red flags. The only thing is like making sure sustainability is added.
For sure.
And then the other thing that I wanted to push back on your statement. I know we don't have a lot of time, so I'll be super quick about it. But going through and like students, we have multiple sections, a 15-minute meeting with like 3 or 4 students talking to a legislator. We're not going to be able to cover every section. Realistically, we're going to cover one section, maybe 2. The choose your own adventure part of it is the most impactful part of it, with students being able to identify and see themselves in specific bills and talk about their own personal experiences. Because if you have a student that goes in and says, I want to support financial aid, student employment, health and wellness, and these miscellaneous bills. But if you, that's not as impactful as having a student come in and say, I'm a Washington College Grant recipient. I'm the first person in my family to go to college. I wouldn't be able to be here today. I'm AS president. I would not be able to have that opportunity without this bill. I would like you to further support this and then move on to different things. I really think that that is the most important part of it. And so I wouldn't really worry about making sure that every legislator gets the same 5 bills, because that just really won't happen.
Yes, thank you for that. Okay, so I want to discuss the additions of sustainability. There's also a section on housing, and my browser isn't working, so I can't bring that up. But I can send all of this in our executive board teams because I want to be getting all of your feedback, because I've been working very intensely with the LEC about this. But again, it is the AS executive board that's going to be ultimately approving this. So yeah, maybe we could talk for a second about the process of getting more input from the AS executive board. Like Kira, Gabe, I know you both have a lot to include, which I want to hear, and just everybody on this board. Like there's areas of this agenda that apply to all of our different, you know, sections of our domain. And I will say that in regard to like topic area and then bill, I actually don't have anything to say. I can't collect my thoughts. But we only have, you know, less than 3 minutes left. If anybody like has any burning comments or questions to discuss in this meeting here and now is your time. Otherwise, I would like to be in contact with everybody through our teams and getting feedback on this, because the process is we have a LAC meeting on Monday on the 22nd, 4:30 to 6 in VU 567. And if any of you would like to be guests to discuss any of these areas, that would be cool. Just let me know. My plan was to come to the executive board next week on the 25th and get this agenda approved. It is not in the condition currently, like there's going to be substantial changes between now and then. So I'm just wondering like what that process should look like from here to then. Kira.
I just want to say, as it is now, with multiple areas missing, like housing, we haven't even had a chance to look at that. So I don't necessarily know if I feel comfortable with that being listed as an action item first. And I have hesitancies about passing it as well, especially since lobby day isn't for another month. And so there is more time for us to pass it and do like a little bit of changes to it. And then also, this isn't the final format that the agenda is. When we approve the agenda, it's in its like final form in Canva and like looks all pretty. And so it's gonna look a lot different. So I don't necessarily know if it's appropriate to pass it next meeting. I would feel most comfortable if it was before the board at least one more time.
Okay. What did I have to say about that? I had some confusion about what like how the agenda gets approved of like, I was assuming that it was just content, like we were saying, like here's the issue area, like here's all the words that we're saying, and then the way that it looks can be done like, you know, after it's approved. It's about like the words on the page is what needs to be approved by the exec board.
Yeah, that definitely is a good question. We haven't done that in the past. That's something that we can think about. But if you look through the other meeting minutes and meeting materials from previous years, I really suggest doing that. But they have seen it in forms in previous years where it looks like this, and then we see it in its nice, pretty form maybe once or twice, and then we approve it. I really am not understanding what the rush is, because Lobby Day, as I said, is not for another month, and so we're not under a really strict time frame to approve it.
So I wanted to give myself some buffer time, you know, set like my mental goal to get it by the 25th, and then saying, you know, it's probably not going to be the 25th, so we still have 2 meetings after that. But I am not sure where it stands. I wanted to be able to share the agenda with people who've signed up for Lobby Day, so that they know in advance what they're going to be lobbying for, instead of like showing up the day of and being like, oh, you know, here's the thing, which, like, you know, if that's how it happens, that's fine. But I wanted to have it pass as quickly as possible so I can start publicizing it, because I have not been very specific on what we're going to be lobbying on, because nothing is set in stone yet. And so I'm asking for some clarity on how if I can, or if I should, like, communicate to the public about what is on our agenda if it is not yet finalized or approved.
Yeah, so we're at time. I think one way that we can move this conversation from executive board is, Erin, you can find a time with Adam to maybe discuss that, or you, me, and Adam can find a time to discuss it a little bit more and figure out the best situation moving forward.
Yeah, Adam and I had talked earlier today, and he said Casey has more like experience with Lobby Day in the agenda, so I have a meeting with Casey that I can bring all this up in. If you want, we should also be scheduling meetings.
And Adam here, quick advisor question / thought, you know, absent publishing the entire approved legislative agenda, if, you know, exec board as the approving body is okay with the content areas being shared, that is something you could, you know, pre-publish and share with potential participants. I would advocate for that. You know, even to the messaging of, and we'll share the official agenda as soon as it's approved, give them a sense of timeline for that. It seems like maybe the middle ground of the tension I've heard. See, Sophie has hand raised.
Yeah, last year there was, I think ASWWU shared a draft with people who were going to Lobby Day, and that was really effective, because I think, like, and I know that you're looking to lose bills, but I think like another bill was added just from that process, because like someone who was just going, someone who wasn't really involved in government, actually suggested something. So it could also be a good opportunity for feedback if you want to just like release it as a draft.
Yeah, I think I will do that after the next LEC meeting, when we focus more on content, or like wording and formatting. And for the registration for the event on WIN, there is a section to add any like things that you want to lobby for. And so we have gotten input and feedback from people who are going to the event about what they want to see on the agenda.
Okay, well, I think that this was a great conversation. We can definitely schedule more time to talk about it next meeting. And we can adjourn this meeting at 7:04 p.m. And if you guys have all gotten a notification, apparently school is on tomorrow. Campus is going to be open, so.
Yay.
I'm knocking on wood right now.
Alrighty, y'all. Procedurally ending our meeting, having this be the first time we use Teams Town Hall for a remote meeting. I do not know if it's going to kick us all off, but I suspect it will. So have a good evening. Appreciate all the work you're doing. Take care, everyone.